Imagine your boat sinking in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean at night, with nothing around you for over 1,000 miles in any direction. Now imagine climbing into a rubber life raft roughly the size of a small car, and realizing rescue might never come. Most people wouldn't survive the first week. One man survived 76 days. So how does a person stay alive? Completely alone, adrift on open ocean for over 2.5 months. In January of 1982, a sailor named Stephen Callahan was crossing the Atlantic alone in a small sloop when something struck the hull in the middle of the night, most likely a whale. Within minutes, his boat was taking on water fast. He barely had time to grab a small emergency life raft and a handful of supplies before his boat sank beneath him completely. What he had left fit in the raft with him: a few pounds of food, some solar stills to make drinking water, a spear gun, and almost nothing else, floating in open ocean, roughly halfway between Africa and the Caribbean. For the first stretch, survival meant simply not panicking. A psychologist named John Leach, who has spent decades studying exactly how humans respond to extreme survival situations, found something counterintuitive in his research. In the earliest moments of a disaster, roughly 10 to 20% of people respond with clear, effective action. The vast majority freeze completely, unable to process what's happening. And a smaller group actively works against their own survival, panicking in ways that make things worse. Callahan's own written account lines up almost exactly with Leach's findings. He described forcing himself through a kind of mental checklist, refusing to let the scale of the disaster overwhelm him all at once. Water, food, signal, repair. One problem addressed at a time, rather than the entire impossible situation altogether. But surviving the first hours was only the beginning. Water was the immediate crisis. Without it, a person can die in days. Callahan's solar stills, designed to convert seawater into drinking water through evaporation, kept failing in the harsh ocean conditions, forcing him to ration what little clean water he managed to collect, sometimes down to just a few sips a day. Food posed a different problem entirely, one that led to something researchers studying open ocean ecosystems have documented repeatedly. Small drifting objects in open water, like life rafts, naturally attract fish. Within days, a school of triggerfish had gathered directly beneath Callahan's raft, drawn to the shade and shelter it provided. He speared them for food, but they also caused a new danger. The fish repeatedly punctured the raft's rubber hull, forcing him into a constant, exhausting cycle of catching food and patching the very thing keeping him alive. His body was also quietly changing beneath him. Research on prolonged starvation, studied extensively by physiologists examining extreme survival conditions, shows the body doesn't just weaken randomly. It shifts into a highly specific state, burning through fat reserves first, preserving muscle and organ function as long as biologically possible, essentially rationing itself the same way Callahan was rationing his water. By the time he was finally spotted by fishermen near Guadeloupe, 76 days after his boat sank, Callahan had lost roughly a third of his entire body weight. What kept him alive wasn't just supplies or luck, though both mattered. It was the same pattern Leach's research keeps finding across wildly different survival situations. Break an impossible problem into small, immediate, solvable pieces. Refuse to let your mind process the full scale of the disaster all at once, because that scale alone is enough to paralyze anyone. You'll likely never find yourself alone in an inflatable raft in the middle of an ocean. But nearly everyone eventually faces a moment that feels similarly impossible, overwhelming, and far too large to process all at once. Callahan's 76 days suggest The same strategy applies on dry land too. Not solving everything, just solving the next thing. Water, food, signal, repair. One problem at a time is how you survive the ones that feel like they can't be survived at all.